Greetings, friends and citizens of the world. This is Brother Bart's Conspiracy Corner News. I am Bart Sibrel of Sibrel.com. You may have just seen a recent upload about Apollo 1 fire. Special United States Senate and House of Representatives reports that were very difficult to find that were purchased from the estate of the dead astronaut's widow, Roger Chaffee, one of the three men who died on January 27th, 1967, in what is referred to as the Apollo 1 fire. These reports were, again, very hard to find because what the government did is they intentionally misfiled them. They named them in such a way that technically they could claim that they're not classified. It would be like looking for something under Bart Sibrel and calling me John Smith. You would never know to look under John Smith. And they did things like that. So basically what happened on January 27th, 1967 is the crew that would have been the first crew to walk on the moon, which was Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White, they died in a fire when the rockets were not even being fired. Now, the commander of the mission, Gus Grissom, was the most popular astronaut in the astronaut corps. And this was because when he did an earlier Mercury flight, when he landed in the ocean, the impact inadvertently triggered the explosive bolts on the capsule, and which of course is an emergency way of exiting the vehicle, and it explodes the door outward. Because of the impact of the ocean, the door bolts were triggered accidentally and the door came off while the spacecraft was bobbing underwater. Naturally, it started to fill with water and the capsule began to sink immediately with him inside. And, of course, that was very life-threatening. What made it worse is that this guy, being such a beloved father to his son, who I have talked to for about 3 hours about the Apollo 1 incident, who told me personally, this guy is no dummy, Scott Grissom. He, at the time that we spoke, was a 747 pilot for Federal Express. He said they are 100% certain that that fire was set deliberately. We'll get back to that in a minute. So Gus Grissom, being such a great father, said that what he was going to do for his son, Scott Grissom, who I spoke to, was that he was going to put about 6 rolls of bank nickels, 3 in each pocket, and take them up into outer space with him so that when he returned, he could give them to his son, who was approximately in the 3rd grade at the time, and then he could hand those out to his classmates as souvenirs. Hey, here's a nickel that has been in outer space. So he thought this would be a great fun thing to do for the kids. Well, when he started sinking to the bottom of the ocean with the extra weight of 6 rolls of nickels in his pocket, he said to himself, that wasn't such a brilliant idea, was it? When he confessed this to the news media, they just all laughed. And it was partially because of this that he became the most beloved astronaut in the astronaut corps. But what made him especially beloved is when they found out that he almost drowned by sinking to the bottom of the ocean, one of the reporters asked him, "Were you afraid?" And everyone was waiting for what this brave astronaut was going to say. And he said, "Of course I was afraid." You see, a hero isn't someone who's not afraid. A hero is someone who is afraid, but does it anyway. And so with these two things, the story about the nickels and how he made a big mistake adding the extra weight as he was sinking to the bottom of the ocean, plus just confessing that he was a real person just like them who had fears and anxieties like anybody else, he became the most beloved astronaut in the Space Corps. So naturally, NASA, being a PR agency for multiple reasons, chose him to be the first astronaut to walk on the moon. Many people don't know this. That's why it was called Apollo 1, the first crew to walk on the moon. Even though they didn't intend on going to the moon on that mission, it was the first of several missions to make baby steps toward that. They called it Apollo 1. They put the best crew, the first crew, the crew intended to go to the moon in it. he was in that capsule. Now, one of the personality qualities of Gus Grissom was that he didn't put up with BS. He spoke his mind. So when he saw, which is what Bill Casing saw, that everything was so departmentalized, and as soon as one department making equipment to go to the moon for the first time finally became skilled at what they were going to do, they would take everybody out and put in freshmen who had no experience in the exact same department to redo everything else. And when they became skilled at that exact task, they took them out too. This was so no one could get the full picture that the equipment couldn't do it and they couldn't really go to the moon. That's why they were doing the opposite of what was logical. When Gus Grissom saw these things, he said, something's wrong here. This going to the moon in 2 years for the first time when our equipment isn't working, something's not right here. In fact, moments before he burned alive on the ground without rockets being fired, okay, he could not even communicate through a wired intercom system between the spacecraft and the building a few feet away. He kept talking to them. They said, I can't hear you. He kept talking to them. They said, we can't hear you. And one of his last words were, hey guys, how are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings? A few minutes later, a mysterious fire started, and the crew that would have been the crew to walk on the moon were eliminated. As a warning, I believe, to the other astronauts to cooperate. And the real reason why they set this fire, okay, was because a few days before the Apollo 1 mission, Gus Grissom was getting so frustrated, he was making complaints up the chain of command. You need to fix this, fix this, fix this, and no one would fix anything because they knew they were going to only orbit the Earth, which they had already done, so fixing all this other stuff was a waste of time and money. But at that point, they had not yet told the astronauts of their intention to fake the moon mission. So in Gus Grissom's fury, he had, according to his wife, Betty Grissom, who I also spoke to for several hours, who also said that she is 100% convinced that the fire was set deliberately. And they have painstakingly investigated this, forensically interviewing people and so forth and so on. So if the son and the widow of the dead astronaut says they're 100% certain that the fire was set deliberately, then you better believe I believe them. So a few days before he burned alive, Gus Grissom was so furious that he was getting nowhere going up the chain of command to fix all this equipment that he took a lemon. He grew multiple things. He had kind of like a gardener's hobby. He grew grapefruit trees and apple trees and orange trees. After all, he lived in Florida. And he had apparently a lemon tree that the lemons were so big they were the size of a grapefruit. So he took one of these and he cut the bottom part of a wired coat hanger so it would kind of stick in the big lemon on both sides of it, turned the hook around, and he hung it on the top of the spacecraft. You know, the part they go into, the part that he died in a few days later. And then, without permission, he had an impromptu press conference because the media was pretty much camped out there every day recording their progress to go to the moon for allegedly the first time, right? So he invited in the media without the permission of his superiors, and they photographed a lemon on top of the spacecraft. Now, in case you don't know, when you buy a car that is a jalopy, a piece of junk, one of the nicknames for that junk is called a lemon. And that's why he hung a lemon on the top of the spacecraft. And so when it made the newspapers and the TV evening news, you can imagine the generals at the Pentagon who were startled as they're eating their TV dinner, seeing a lemon on top of the spacecraft, and the number one guy to be the first man on the moon is saying that the equipment to get there is a piece of junk to the whole world. And a few days later, he no longer existed to make those complaints. In fact, Betty Grissom told me that CIA agents went to his house and removed all of his personal documents, including a report he was going to give to his United States Senator. You see this? United States Senate. And they did not want people in the Senate receiving the critical information that this equipment, as he wrote, was 10 years away from reaching the moon, minimum, not 2. They confiscated files, this data, these critical reports from his house after he died and before they even told his widow of his death. The moment he died, knock on the door, they take the reports and somebody else an hour later told his wife that he was dead. That's what happened, okay? So this report and the other one that is also for sale, both just for $200. This one is from the United States Senate. As you notice, the event took place January 27th, and lo and behold, practically a week later, they completely conclude that it was just a random accident. Only about a week to figure out what happened in a spacecraft that had never been built before with miles and miles of wiring in it. Somehow they figure out that mystery so quickly. Amazing. And then over here is the report of the United States House of Representatives on the same topic. And you can see the little clever thing they did. When people look up the Apollo 1 report in the archives, they can't find it because they named it Apollo 204. So they can claim it's public available, not classified, and yet no one would be able to find it. We found it, and here they are. Just to let you know, a little side note, okay? Gus Grissom, the day before he died, told his wife, Betty Grissom, and I spoke with her for 2 hours, and her son, Scott Grissom, for 3 hours. So I did 5 hours of investigating this with the people who have investigated this for many years. 100% certain the fire was set deliberately. So you see how unique and important these reports are. They do contain hints as to what really happened. Gus Grissom told his wife Betty the day before he burned alive that for some strange reason, that day, one day before the fire, CIA agents were seen all over the spacecraft. What a coincidence. From my study of the report, things that were in there but were not mentioned in the conclusion, that they were poisoned by cyanide gas, so that they hopefully would be dead before the fire, and that the fire was basically used to get rid of the forensic evidence of the homicide. You can study these for yourself and draw your own conclusions. Here's your chance to own an important part of Apollo history, of the Apollo 1 fire that most people don't know about, the crew that would have been the first crew to walk on the moon had not their righteous leader, Gus Grissom, been so critical of the space program, and they rightly concluded that he would have never cooperated with the faking of the moon landing and very likely would have gone public about it. So this report and the other one that is also for sale, both just for $200. This one is from the United States Senate. As you notice, the event took place January 27th, and lo and behold, practically a week later, they completely conclude that it was just a random accident. Only about a week to figure out what happened in a spacecraft that had never been built before with miles and miles of wiring in it. Somehow they figure out that mystery so quickly. Amazing. And then over here is the report of the United States House of Representatives on the same topic. And you can see the little clever thing they did. When people look up the Apollo 1 report in the archives, they can't find it because they named it Apollo 204. So they can claim it's public available, not classified, and yet no one would be able to find it. We found it, and here they are. The links to this will be in the description of this video. Both of these are autographed by me, Bart Sibrel. This one is listed first. They're on eBay. This is what it looks like. This one is on eBay. The opening bid is $200. If you want to get it now ahead of anybody else, you pay $300. You pay by PayPal, and there'll be a small charge for shipping. Here's the other one here. Both links are here. The same thing, $200. And $300 if you want it right away. This will help me finance my projects that I'm working on, including finishing my long-awaited book, Moon Man, which will mention the code name of the secret project to Apollo, as well as the military base where it was filmed, the dates where it was filmed, and a list of 15 VIP visitors who were there in attendance, given to me by the former head of security of this military base. Both of these are autographed by me, Bart Sibrel. The links to buy these are in the description of this video, and thank you for your time, and I hope you know more about why these documents are one of a kind and very, very special.